Another weekend gone, and here we are, ready to look back at the big moments from world sport from the past weekend. Well, there's nothing bigger than a football derby, and this weekend saw two, one in Kenya and one in Manchester. They say the art of conversation is to talk about the right thing at the right time, and this is the right place. You're watching The Conversation. Welcome to The Conversation. I'm Ehi Longi, and in the studio with me is regular guest Carlos Salvador. Hi, Carlos. How are you?
Hello, Ehi. Very
Excellent. Now, listen, it's one of the biggest derby rivalries on the continent, and when Gor Mahia play AFC Leopards in Kenya, sparks are always sure to fly on and off the pitch. And adding spice to yesterday's game was the drama that has engulfed Kenyan football over the past month. But this time, with the tragedy of terrorist violence in Garissa as a backdrop, there was probably more unity than enmity at this weekend's game.
This derby was not, it didn't look like it was going to be chaotic because for instance, our friends, the Gor Mahias, they came confident that they're going to win this match. So on their part, they did not have tension. And for us, on our part, as AFC Leopards, well, we are ready to accept whatever results that come out. So I didn't see it as being a serious security risk.
I can say it is a derby. And a derby, there is a lot of tension, but we were good. That is Gor Mahia. We were good, but unfortunately, draw is a win for FC.
The most important thing that there was peace. You know, Kenyans need peace. Most of people, if rivals want to meet, they think that we are going to fight ourselves physically. But it's good that our fans have changed, and we need it to keep on the way it is.
Okay, Carlos, it was a draw there. And last week we obviously talked about some of the off-field issues surrounding Kenyan football. But it was really good to see that, as you said in the intro there to the VT, that actually it was a good occasion and everyone went home safe and enjoyed the day. What were your thoughts on the derby game?
Well, like you said, last week, difficult for Kenyan football in terms of the infrastructure. So it's good for the football to do the talking. Big Kenyan derby, of course. Yeah, it's a 1-1 stalemate. So I'm sure most, the fans would have wanted a win either way. But I think it's good for Kenyan football. And as you say, post-Garissa, to bring the community together, only football does that regularly on the African continent.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, we know where sport lies, and we know we all say to keep sports and politics together, but my compliments to the Gor Mahia and AFC Leopards fans for being part of what was a great unifying occasion, as we talked about. But actually, let's take that opportunity, since we're discussing Kenyan football. Another Kenyan footballer who's had a great weekend, though he did get booked and he's going to miss the next two key matches for his club, Vincent Wanyama, our boy in the EPL. One key question. Firstly, do you think his team is likely to qualify? We see City in a bit of trouble, Liverpool looking to refine their form. Where do you think Southampton's season's likely to go?
I think based on where they are right now, you would expect them to finish off in the 5th or 6th, potentially go into the Europa League. I think it'd be great for English football to see Southampton play in the Europa League. They play a very attractive possession style of football, which is always good within European competition to hold on to the ball. So and of course, being one of the more unfancied, less known teams in the Premier League, it's a good advertisement for the league.
Okay, but what about Vincent himself? There's a lot of talk about bigger clubs. Apologies to any Southampton fans out there, but bigger clubs, the likes of Arsenal are looking at him, possibly Liverpool have been mentioned, maybe even moves abroad. He obviously came from Celtic as well, a big club in quite a small league in Scotland, but he's got lots of Champions League experience. Do you think that if Southampton perhaps don't make the UEFA Cup, that he should move on? Or do you think Southampton is about where he's good for and he should stay there until they do make the Champions League?
No, I think he has the ability to play at a bigger club. I actually think that Southampton is a very big club within the Premier League already in terms of the way that they play football. I think his decision will be based on where he thinks they can go and how hard they can push. In terms of him playing for a bigger club, I think he's got all the experience. He was one of the key men for Celtic in many a Champions League games. He's played a lot of the big teams within Europe, and he's always conducted himself very well on the pitch, had a few man of the match performances. So he is a big game player. And when you look at some of the clubs that are being spoken about, the likes of Arsenal, you know, you do have Coquelin in there, who's had a fantastic season. But, you know, you look at Arsenal, you say, you know, one of the first things you think about is, you know, are they strong enough in depth? And if you brought Vincent into that situation there, you'd think that Arsenal would be a better team. And of course, he'd have more experience in terms of European competition than, say, Coquelin at the moment.
OK, but talking actually about potential transfers, I mean, we will talk about the Man United-Man City game specifically after this, but maybe someone like Wanyama at Man City in that midfield supporting Toure, another discussion point for us maybe after the break. But do you see him as being possibly an answer in terms of a nice, solid defensive player? He's not going to do much else. He's just going to cover and let the attacking players play. Do you think it could be the answer to some of the problems that people say City are having now?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we're going to touch on City. There's a lot of things to talk about and discuss so far as City's concerned. That being one of the situations in terms of not being strong enough in central midfield from a defensive point of view. Like I said, I think Vincent can do that job for a bigger club, and City are a big club. In terms of whether he'll fit in there with their plans, really depends on where the club wants to go based on the season that they've had, which has been very disappointing.
Has been a disappointing season, but back to Southampton, and let's give Vincent his due. At the start of the season, no one saw them doing this. Now, is it Ronald Koeman's management, or is it generally that actually, if you look at City, if you look at Liverpool, perhaps some of the more established clubs haven't had that consistent a season, which has allowed the Southamptons and possibly the West Hams to be part of a conversation then for maybe perhaps longer than you would expect in a Premiership season?
Not at all. As far as I'm concerned, the management at Southampton's been wonderful. They've played great football. The team unity is very strong. We got to remember that they lost a lot of first-team players during the pre-season, and that's why perhaps we felt that they wouldn't do as strongly this season. But, you know, also when you look at Southampton as a club, I think it's been well managed and well run for several years now. They have gone through some changes since they've come into the Premier League in terms of having brought in Pochettino first and now Koeman. But in all reality, they're a very good, strong club. They've produced many talented players, you know, your Bales, your Walcott. So, you know, they've had a lot of players leave them. But I think where they are now is because of how the club is structured. OK, well, let's hang on that point. What we'll do before we come back after the break, as I said, there was lots of big matches in Kenya this weekend. So you have a look at other results, and when we come back, we'll talk about City, Man United. Welcome back to the conversation. In the English Premier League, another key derby took place with Manchester rivals United and City facing each other with more than just bragging rights at stake. Champion City were looking to halt a run of successive defeats and reassert their authority at the top of the table. United were looking to overtake them and secure their ambitions for a UEFA Champions League spot for next season.
We scored a goal. We scored a second goal. Fantastic attack also. And then, the second half. Now I have to say the second half instead of the first half, but the second half was fantastic, I think.
I think that the fans of City are very important fans. Maybe we are not in a good moment. I am sure they will continue supporting this club because, I repeat, we were the whole year in the second place. It was a bad 2015, a very bad week, but we have all together to play the next 6 games to try to recover our position.
Well, this would have been a derby watched around the world. Carlos, Were you surprised by the result, 4-2 to Man United?
Yeah, I think it is a surprise result in terms of the scoreline. Obviously, City haven't been in the best form. United have. They've played some big games over the last couple of weeks. So they were in the right condition and mentally to go into this game, having lost the last 4 derbies to City. So both teams had something to play for, as we well know. But of course, United edged it, well, more than edged it, and City just weren't prepared.
Okay, I'm talking about City's preparations there. We might look at the fortunes of either manager shortly. But in terms of a player who's come under, even many who watched the game would have seen that a lot of analysts singled out Yaya Toure as having not performed. But interestingly, you think that actually maybe they're looking at it the wrong way. I mean, what do you think of his performance on the day?
Yeah, I think, football is a team sport. And the moment we try to scapegoat certain players for teams losing the game, we're going in the wrong direction. First and foremost, I've heard he appears lazy. Well, he ran 11 kilometres in the game, which is like the 4th highest in that particular game. So I don't think it's a case of him not applying himself, but it's potentially that City haven't restructured their kind of game tactics when they're under par. I think even when they play Crystal Palace, when they're not at their best, they find it very difficult to change their style of play. And as we saw from this game, the centre of midfield was totally overrun by United, and City just didn't have a chance.
I mean, interesting you talk about Palace there. We'll pick up on Yannick Bolasie's performance a bit later, but focusing a little bit more on City just for now. From what you're saying then, is it a managerial issue? So is it one and done or two and done for Pellegrini? Or do you think he should be allowed to reform the side? It's an aging side. It's pointed out there's quite an old side. Maybe get in some younger legs, maybe Vincent Wanyama, as we were discussing, for midfield. Do you think it's Pellegrini's fault that the result came out and it's something he can fix?
I think when you've got a squad who, as good as City have, I know they're aging, as we mentioned, but they're a very good squad. They haven't lit the Premier League all season. I think management does have to take blame. Whether that means he needs to lose his job is another thing. Of course, football isn't always managed in the right way in terms of the boardroom. So he will be under some immense pressure. But if you look at the contract that he was given, 5 cups and league titles within 5 years, even not winning anything this year, he's still on target. The reality is whether they feel that the direction of the team on the field is going in the right place.
And what's your personal opinion of that? Is it going in the right place or no?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. They've been poor to watch this season. They haven't really lit the Premier League, as I said, with the type of squad that they have. And one of the biggest problems, like I mentioned earlier, is tactically, they do not know, or they don't seem to know how to change it when they're not playing at their best.
Okay, just quickly, there's been a lot of speculation, even throughout the season, because Yaya has come under a lot of pressure about him possibly moving on, possibly rejoining Roberto Mancini in Italian football. Where do you, having come from Barcelona and obviously had all the success there, he's had a degree of success, at least within the UK, not in Champions League with Man City. Where would you, if you were advising Yaya, where would you tell him is the next frontier for him? He needs probably his last big contract before retirement, possibly?
Well, if we're talking about the fact that, he's aging and perhaps he hasn't got the pace needed to do that box-to-box job, which I've never felt he was, equipped for. He's always been the attacking midfielder as opposed to one that's going to cover each and every box. But, if we look at it from that angle, you'd say that the Italian league is the best place to go. He's already been in Spain. He's been in England now. So in reality, the Italian league would be the best place for him to go.
Okay. Well, as I said, we're going to pick up on another stellar performance this weekend in the EPL from an African player, one who I understand you know quite well, actually, and that's Yannick Bolasie.
Yes.
Very, very effervescent performance with his hat-trick there. Probably slightly dispirited Sunderland coming off their loss in the North East Derby. Where is Yannick Bolasie from this season in terms of attacking midfielders we've seen in the Premiership? He's had a lot of praise from Alan Pardew since Alan Pardew arrived at Palace, but do you feel that praise is deserved? Do you feel he's merited being seen as a leading light within the Premiership? Should he be staying at Palace next season? Should he move on? Where do you see Yannick at the moment?
Well, I mean, just to talk about Sunderland first, they actually won the North East Derby 1-0, Jermaine Defoe's wonderful goal. So they came in on a high. So it wasn't an easy start for Palace at all. I think both teams would have been looking forward to that game. I think that Yannick's at the right club. It's only his second season in the Premier League. Before this hat-trick, he'd only scored 1 goal in the Premier League. So to talk about him moving to a bigger club, you have to look at whether he's going to be a starting player. And at the moment, he's starting for Palace, which is great progression for a 25-year-old. What you don't want to do is move to a bigger club where you're going to be sat on the bench.
Okay. I mean, in terms of, you know Yannick back very well. Obviously, you go back quite a while. I mean, he hasn't emerged from anywhere. He's come from Maltese football and everything. But in terms of the assets, the qualities you've seen, tell us what having coached him before and having played with him before, what do you see as his strengths and his key points that he brings to a team?
Well, he's a very powerful runner. So, very fast on the ball, very tricky player, very aggressive in terms of the manner in which he attacks the opponents. So from an attacking midfielder's point of view, he has all the attributes. I think over the last couple games, and especially this season compared to last season, his end product has been better in terms of setting up Palace's goals. He also set up Glenn Murray's goal against Sunderland. But I think where he will need to improve to make that bigger step to a top 5 club is in the goal scoring. Like I said, he's now got 4 Premier League goals because of that particular hat-trick, which is also one of the fastest hat-tricks in Premier League history, which is great for someone, who you've gone back a while with, in terms of me coaching and whatnot. But I think, you look at Hazard, he's on 12 goals. Berahino's on 12 goals. Silva's on 11. Yaya Touré's on 8. So if you want to compete at that higher level, you're going to need to score more goals. And I think that's one thing that Alan Pardew's got to him.
Okay. Well, when we return after the break, we're going to have a look at the upcoming stages of the UEFA Champions League. But before that, have a look at where we stand in the EPL table. Thank you. Welcome back to the conversation. This week, we get to the quarter-final stages of the UEFA Champions League. There are 8 teams left, standing time for the tough to get going. Let's take a look at the fixtures for Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, Carlos, it looks like we're now at the business end of the Champions League, if you like. We've had all the runners and riders have been separated into the last 8. Looking across it, the team that I'd like to pick up on really because of the number of African players they have playing for them is Porto, who have Brahimi and Abubakar, 2 key players for their team. Brahimi had maybe not the brightest AFCON, maybe I think a bit more was expected of him at AFCON, but his club form has been brilliant. His form in the Champions League has been very effective for his team. However, they do come across the juggernaut that is Bayern Munich. Where do you see Porto's fate against Bayern?
Yeah, on paper, everyone's going to believe that Bayern's going to win the game. But of course, with football, you have to turn up and you have to play. And there's probably no better time to play Bayern Munich than
You're referring to their injuries, of course.
Yeah. don't get me wrong, they've got the likes of Thiago Silva and Lahm to come in who are great within themselves. But, when you're missing Alaba, who will probably be out for the rest of the season, Frank Ribery is still a question mark. Steinschweiger and Robben, also a question mark. As a Porto player, I'd be thinking, great, this is when we want to play them.
Okay, another big fixture that we'll be looking at, and I'm sure, even though there are no African players involved in this, just because of the teams involved, a lot of African soccer fans will be following. Well, actually 2 fixtures, but the first one I want to start with is the Madrid derby. Yeah. Who is favourite? It's kind of difficult to read because Real Madrid obviously have, especially the European pedigree, but perhaps Atletico have had the whip hand over Real the last few fixtures.
Yeah, since the Champions League final last year, which Real won, Real has lost every game against Atletico. So from a mentality point of view, you'd think that Atletico will want to, will believe that they can win, especially because the first leg is also at Vicente Calderon, where they're very strong at home. But of course, Real, when you talk about Real and you talk about the Champions League, it's almost a marriage made in heaven. And like they showed in the Champions League final last year, they can pull it out of the hat. I think Atletico outplayed them in that Champions League final, but as we say, it is the Champions League, it is Real Madrid, and they can pull it out of the hat when they want to.
Okay, but Real Madrid themselves are under quite a bit of pressure. At least Carlo Ancelotti seems to be under quite a bit of pressure. They're back in the La Liga title race, obviously, with the win at the weekend and Barcelona drawing. But generally, the fans seem a bit dissatisfied with some of the performances of the players in key matches, despite his great goal-scoring form. Ronaldo still doesn't seem to have gelled with all his teammates. He's put quite a bit of pressure on Bale this season. Do you think Ancelotti and, in fact, the Real Madrid squad need to win the Champions League in order to stay together for next year?
I think if you're a Real Madrid manager, you need to win the Champions League. That's what Real Madrid is based on. So I don't think Ancelotti is going under any pressures that he didn't have last year. I think with Real Madrid, you're always going to have some questions of unity within the squad because they buy big players and they expect them all to gel and everybody wants to play and everybody wants to be that number one. So at some points within the season, I think it's only natural that there's always going to be a question mark in terms of how well people are getting on and not. But like I said, it's the Champions League. That's what Real Madrid lives for.
Okay, well, that's a very fair point there. But then I suppose we'll see where Atletico go because with no pressure, perhaps they can just go and have a very good go at Madrid and see what happens.
I don't think it's no pressure at all. I think Diego Simeone, they won the title last year. They got to the final of the Champions League. I don't think that they're going to be able to win the La Liga title, Atletico. I don't believe they're in the cup final either. So the Champions League is their only real opportunity of getting a result or a cup this year. So I think Diego Simeone is definitely going to want to win this game. It's definitely not one for underdogs. I don't think he believes in underdogs.
Okay, well, Simeone looks like he believes in just going for it every game. So we look forward to that. PSG Barcelona, familiarity might breed contempt of this one. They were in the same group. And now, obviously, there's a two-legged match here. Where do you see the favourites? Neymar's back in goal-scoring form. Perhaps Barcelona didn't have the right result of the weekend. But do you see this as, who do you call for this?
It's a very difficult one to call. Like you said, they were in the same groups earlier in the Champions League. They both done well at home, in their home legs. So, when you look at the performance of PSG against Chelsea and how comfortably uncomfortable it was, obviously 10 men down, but they gave a real fight in that game. I think this is probably the most open of the Champions League games to call.
Would you? But then you're putting a team with Neymar, Messi, and Suarez, possibly backed up by Iniesta and Xavi in the middle, and with Piqué at the back. And then PSG, beyond Zlatan, Thiago, you mentioned a couple of, not Thiago, but you mentioned a couple of key players that they have and a couple of key performances. But on paper, PSG, they can't stand to the Barcelona.
On paper, but like I said before, they were in the same group earlier on, and we felt that perhaps Barcelona would beat them comfortably, and they didn't. PSG had some great performances against Barcelona earlier on. I think they've continued that in the Champions League with some of their other games.
Okay, well then let's just try and pick a favourite out of this 8. Who would you say, looking at these 8 now, if you had to put your money on one of them to win it overall, who would you call and why?
Right now, I'd call Bayern Munich. I think they've probably got an easier route to the final in terms of playing Porto. I think they're a very strong team. I don't think they're getting enough competition in terms of the Bundesliga. And I just think that their squad's very strong.
Okay. So let's try and pick out a player from the whole weekend. Lots of African players playing football, both in Africa and obviously in leagues across Europe. My pick for the performer of the weekend is Yannick Bolasie. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree, yeah.
And in terms of next season, my pick is that Vincent Wanyama does move and should move. And obviously, as an Arsenal fan, I'd pick Arsenal. But I think he's probably too big for Southampton. How do you stand with that?
Yeah, I think he can play at a bigger club. You know, I do believe that based on performance, Southampton is a big club within the Premier League. Whether they can do that and transfer that into Europe is another thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to take that from you. And on that note, I shall thank you for being with me in the studio, and I shall thank you for watching at home. Please do remember to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and don't forget to post your own opinions and queries. It's time to start Africa's sporting conversation.